Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Up for discussion this week, the possibility of a sugar tax, the ongoing horse tram saga, and an increase in the sewage rate. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
What measures are most effective when it comes to slowing traffic down? There's been a backlash against a scheme put in place in Strang Road in Braddan, and the politicians criticised the Department of Infrastructure over those traffic calming measures. Former department member Ewan Turner has branded the scheme an eyesore and says the installation on Strang Road, Braddan, looks more suited to a large motorway contraflow system. What measures do you think would be most effective in slowing traffic down in the area? Tell us your thoughts. Why don't we have speed cameras anyway? Surely they raise money to maybe get better road surfaces and slow people down. Oh yes, we're living in the dark ages again, says Phil. Government have the perfect traffic calming measures in place already. Just give the roads a lock prompt finish. Serious note, in Holland they have the perfect solution on the smaller roads. They raise the road up to form a 5 metre long hump. Works perfectly, says Pat. Okay. I sent a text yesterday about these eyesores, but having had time to examine them closer, they remind me of the army checkpoints at the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I would imagine that they're going to be a struggle for the buses, poor drivers. A speed radar connected to traffic lights would soon make motorists slow down, says Tom. Well, yeah, I mean, if you had signs, if it was clearly signposted at the start and the end of the Strang Road there, up as far as the roundabout by the hospital, speed cameras in operation, then anybody that's caught then, it's their own fault, isn't it? These obstacles won't slow people down unless someone's coming the other way. The parked cars on that road is a good traffic calming, but people won't slow down because of these blots on the landscape. And as I said this morning, residents of that road probably speed in other 30-mile-an-hour limits. Hypocrites, I think. Right, okay, let's go to the lines and see what Howard makes of it. Hello, Howard.
This reminds me, that if you look around the island, there's dozens of these idiotic traffic calming schemes that have been put into place and removed. I was just telling Catherine when I worked at the airport, on your approach into the car parking area, you can turn left or right. There's a small roundabout there, and you can go down to the cargo section. But when they first put that in, they planted it with bushes, and they eventually grew so you couldn't see nothing. And then also in the same design pattern, they had the roundabout, but on each north, east, south and west, they had tiny triangles.
Oh, right.
To guide the traffic, supposedly, allegedly.
Yeah.
But what they hadn't taken into consideration were the large vehicles, ourselves included with the refueling wagons. We couldn't get round them. The fire service couldn't. And we actually had to drive on the wrong side of the roundabout to be able to go out through to the fuel farm. Mm. Eventually they took them away and took the bushes away and put grass there. But,
well, I drove through St Mark's recently and I noticed the ones there. Yeah. I mean, they're just like great big sort of, flower pots in the middle.
Yeah.
Just no sense to it at all.
I came through St Mark's myself the other day, actually. I thought, what in the name of God are they? And then I realised, I thought, maybe the commissioners have put them there, as ornaments and decorating the place. They are an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a classic example of when you drive up and you come to the top of Victoria Road and Glencrutchy Road.
Yes.
They put a nice little curve in the pavement. It's the same outside Corkle's garage. There's a nice little curve in the pavement. There's somebody in an office somewhere with one of these computer-aided design things, the CAD systems, and they look brilliant on paper, but put them into practice and they're useless.
Right,
so
fair
the best
dues.
advice would be whoever's there, just turf that computer out through the window and become back to a sensible form of living.
Get back to a French, French curves and a slide rule.
Yeah, well, there's one there where you come up, and instead of turning into the accident and emergency place and going through to Palatine, they had a nice little curve there. They had to take that out. You'll still see the fresh tarmac where they had to fill it in.
Right, okay. All right, thank you for calling, Howard. You're always welcome on the programme. And Michael's on. Hello, Michael.
The thing I think about is cameras.
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've got three very important parts of motoring, not problems, but regulation.
Yes.
Speeding, jumping lights,
Yeah.
and driving without tax and insurance.
Mm.
The cameras, if the laws are passed, what is wrong with having cameras to enforce them?
Well, I think that as a keen motorist, I've always been a bit resistant to them because certainly in the UK, they use speed cameras over there willy-nilly, and it is more a way of raising money, I think, than it is of trying to slow people down or anything.
What you do in a way is having what I would call trickery, aren't you?
Yeah.
You don't know whether you're in the right zone or a left zone.
That's right, yeah. Whereas here in the Isle of Man, as you say, they're there for a specific purpose.
It's clear cut, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
we
it
all
is.
know we're in Strang Road and we should be doing 20, 30 or whatever.
Yeah,
So why not enforce it?
yeah.
I just don't see the objection to speed cameras. I don't see the objection to vehicle recognition numbers.
No.
Cameras. And whatever.
Yeah.
If the law exists, traffic light jumping in honking, especially outside the Manx Arms,
Yeah.
it's lethal.
Well, I mean, we often say on this programme that the rules and regulations and the laws are already in place. We don't need any more of that. What we do need is better enforcement.
Yeah, and people are up in arms because they have cameras. We need the cameras. They will do the enforcement. It'll free up police officers standing at every corner. And
Yeah, pay for themselves as well with the
it
fines.
wouldn't it? Yeah. I just don't see the objection.
All right, good point. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for joining us. Traffic calming, the little islands pedestrian stands that they put in the middle of the road are dangerous. Lots are not illuminated or even painted. There's one on the main road near Birchill Estate that has a curb about 14 inches high. If you hit that on a bike, you'd be dead, says John. True. Traffic calming, fantastic in Ramsey, especially on the Leaney Road and Queen's Drive West. The residents from both sides just abandon the cars, vans and motorhomes, thus turning the road into a single lane. It also saves them wearing out the driveways and garages. So it's a bonus for them, isn't it? Oh, how I'd pray for double yellows along there. Facts from Frank. Dewan Turner smacks of not in my backyard. Well, I don't know in this. I think he's probably quite right about it. Odd that people are finding things designed to deter them from using a road difficult to drive around, says Neil. I don't think people are finding them difficult to drive around. Look at them with amazement and think, on which planet was this decided it was a good idea? Stu, Dublin has speed humps so severe that unless you slow down, your car will suffer damage. Put them on Strang Road. Well, I think they had them on Strang Road. They were pretty severe, the speed humps there. Anybody trying to sell a property now on Strang Road hasn't a hope in hell, says Paul. Why? If speed's the only problem, why are the police not out and about with speed guns, etc., catching speeders in villages? Fines could generate income and slow traffic down. Laxey and Baldrine are examples of speeding cars through a village. Merry Christmas from Christine. Thank you, Christine. To the residents of the Strang, a great adage, be careful what you wish for. Looks like the cars are the only things that are now calm, says Steve. To the lines, we've got Jill on. Hello, Jill.
It was, to my mind, that road had traffic calming measures all along, because of all the cars parked both sides.
Yes, well, there is that as well, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't really get two lanes of moving traffic up and down there, or not very often.
No, true. True. I think it's just that people, or some people, and it's always the few that spoil it for the many, I think that some people are just driving too quickly down there is the problem.
Well, I also think a lot of people go up there and park either in the hospital car park or the adjacent one for the rugby club, and then get the bus into work.
Right, okay.
Instead of having to park. So if they did sort of start either making making speeding fines actually mean something other than a slap on the wrist, I mean, fine them.
Well, I mean, usually, I'm not sure about the Isle of Man because I've never been caught for speeding in the Isle of Man, because I never speed in the Isle of Man. But, I mean, in the UK, I was done quite often for speeding, and you always got points on your licence as well. And the problem was that if you got done 4 times within 3 years, you could lose your licence, under the totting up procedure, for fairly minor offences. Now, I assume that the same thing happens in the Isle of Man. I don't know. So it's not necessarily a minor thing to get a speeding fine, I think.
Yeah, but, I just feel that a lot of people, it doesn't matter if I speed, nothing will happen.
Right, yeah.
And so, yes, we could do with speed cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, Richmond Hill is another one coming down south.
I've not noticed that.
That's awful up there.
Is it? I've not noticed that because I use that road twice a day, and I've not really noticed many people going too quickly. I've noticed a few have overtaken me on there, but not that many. My problem on Richmond Hill is people driving too slowly. You know, people going down the hill at 30 miles an hour on the brakes. What's all that about? It's a 50 limit.
Oh, just because it's a 50 limit doesn't mean you have to do it.
You're one of those people, aren't you? All right, Jill, lovely to hear from you. Thanks for calling. Walls with flowers in, says Roy. Stu, I got caught with a speed camera in the UK in the dark on an unfamiliar road, a hire car where the speed limit kept changing. Apart from a fine to pay, it's the automatic 3 penalty points on the licence that should be enough of a deterrent to most people. That from Selena. That just bears out exactly what I was thinking, Selena. I'm surprised that they didn't go that little bit further and recreate Lombard Street in San Francisco. 8 hairpins should do the trick, says Rich. Yeah, I've seen that on movies. It's just like an Alpine pass in miniature, isn't it?
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the island consider adopting a tax on high sugar content products? Russian MHK Julian Watterson wants to find out if there's the stomach for such a levy amongst Tynwald members as a way of trying to combat health issues such as obesity and diabetes. This month's sitting, Mr Watterson will ask him to support the principle of a sugar tax and for government to publish proposals next year.
If we don't think radically about some of the radical problems we've got, we're not going to really change things. We've tried a generation's worth of education and information. It's not having the big change that we need. So if this is the step change that we need in order to make the nation healthier, then I think it will be worthwhile.
The UK announced plans for a tax on sugary drinks, particularly fizzy drinks, earlier this year. It's due to come in force in April 2017. So should the Isle of Man consider something similar? How many of the government are overweight? Come on, set an example, says Stuart. Yeah, it's a case of do as I say, not do as I do, I think, possibly. Why tax everyone because some people can't control their own sugar intake? Why not tax people who need treatment for overindulgence in sugar consumption when they require treatment, says Alan. Well, I don't suppose that's the way it works in terms of requiring treatment and paying for it at the point that it's provided. And if you're very good about sugar, Alan, then you don't need to worry about this because you'll not be paying any tax, I wouldn't have thought. And I think the other thing is, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I'm fairly sure that when I've read articles about this proposed sugar tax in the UK in the past, it does say that it's often families on lower incomes who are the worst in terms of a high sugar intake, sugary drinks and foods and things like that, processed foods. So, you know, if you were to do that, then it's if you were going to be charging people for treatment, it'd be the people who could least afford to pay for it, I suppose. Thought this new administration was going to deal with the major issues like the cost of pensions in government and means testing. This is not top of the list, Mr Speaker, says Bill. Okay, well, that's a valid comment. I mean, I did think when I was interviewing people who were going to stand for the House of Keys at the last election, it's all very well coming out with all these things that, you know, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Once you're actually a part of government, I would suggest that it's possibly a bit of an eye-opener about the things that you can and can't do. Last time Joan Watterson gave us advice on how to live our lives, it didn't end well for him. I wasn't going to mention it. Will he be found in the cake and biscuit aisle at Tesco's being sick because he ate too many wagon wheels, says Mark. Slightly unfair, Mark. Maybe. Sounds like a good idea and would probably have results, but I always feel uneasy about using cost as a public health mechanism. What it means in practice is that poorer people lose the ability to make choices and rich people can do what they want. It's a form of coercion through the wallet. Well, yeah, it is. People should be encouraged to make good choices for themselves. We don't need to sacrifice liberty and freedoms to do that. Yeah, but it only goes so far. You know, people have been encouraged for a long time, I think, to cut down on sugary foods. And I suppose there's been some effect of that, but it's like I've said in the past. It's not unusual for me to be wrong, but I was spectacularly wrong about cigarettes in that I always said that the cost of cigarettes wasn't a mechanism that was going to control the number of people who smoked. And actually, it was the thing that made me finally give up, the fact that they'd gone up so much, and I literally just couldn't afford them one month, and ended up buying a carton of cigarettes on a credit card. And I thought, how ridiculous is this? actually borrowing money to buy cigarettes that are going to kill you. This is nuts. So it was a mechanism that stopped me smoking. And I'm guessing that it's going to be the same with sugar for a lot of people. Scraping the barrel now, says one of our contributors, apart from hitting the sick, the poor and the low paid, this is all that it can come up with while paying lip service to the real issues of high public sector pay and pensions. Okie dokie. Another person then thinking that they're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic rather than getting involved in the real work. David H. says, have you seen the size of some of the hospital staff? Not a very good example. Okie dokie. And some comments from when this story first ran. Trevor said, fresh air tax next. David said, yet another tax for the population of the island. And Julie said, for goodness sake, which kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? But you can see the point. I mean, if you were a member of government and you could see the statistics and the projections, the fact that, everybody was going to get diabetes or a huge proportion of the population was going to get diabetes, a much bigger proportion than historically. And you could lay it at the door of these producers who put in huge amounts of sugar in things. You've got this epidemic of childhood obesity and you've got all these other problems as well. Then it is the sort of thing that governments need to look at. And how do they do it? They can either ban the products, well, we'd be up in arms about that if they told us what we could eat and drink, or they can tax them. And that has the other benefit in that it should, and I'm not quite sure how it would work technically, but it should also bring some money into the economy. Was it £600,000, Julian Watterson said? So that's a good thing because they can use that money on other things. Whether or not that's public sector pensions or not, I don't know. Dear Julian Watterson, so you want to introduce yet another tax? Nice one, fella. Not, says Mike. Stu, it'll be salt tax next, says Kev. Or window tax. That was the one that they had hundreds of years ago, wasn't it? A window tax. Yeah, imagine that. Tax is not a medicine. Why don't governments stop the sugar content in food being so high with legislation? In our case, it's government seeing an opportunity to raise money. Well, yeah, but the alternative wouldn't work either, would it? It would be relatively easy, I would have thought, for the government to say, right, that's it. Anything that's high in sugar is going to be banned. But there would be uproar about it. I'll have a Mars bar, please. And I'm sorry, we can't sell you that. It's been banned. Block of chocolate, no. Can I have those cakes? With the no, not allowed to have those anymore. At least this way, you can still buy stuff that's bad for you, but you're just paying a little bit more for it. That I suppose the tax would go to defray some of the expenses, to cover some of the healthcare costs of people who have too much sugar. But there is a model for it. Let's face it; it's something that they've done for years on things like booze and cigarettes. Yes, we know that they're bad for you, but we'll just tax you lots. So sugar is just the latest of those things, isn't it? Joe says, Stu, I had a very sweet tooth when I was younger, but I now find soft drinks so sickly sweet that I don't like them anymore. No, I've never been. I quite like dandelion and burdock out of a big sort of stoneware jug when I was a kid, but no, I've never, and especially out of cans. There's something about cans that affects the taste of things, and I don't know if it's because there's a lot more air in them or gas in them. But things like Coke, I don't mind it so much out of a bottle, although I can't think the last time I drank a bottle of Coke. But out of a can, it's just, it's far too aerated for me. The one guilty pleasure that I do have, I suppose, is that I take a glass of water to bed with me at night, but I find water so desperately boring that I put some Vimto in it. So and I'm sure that Vimto is probably 90% sugar, so it's probably not good for me. But if they banned it tomorrow, or if they made it twice the price, then I'd just not buy it. So that'd be the end of that.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are you satisfied with the possible reduction in the horse tram lines? I know it's something that we've discussed a few times, but it's still on the political agenda. Politicians are on the verge of overturning the previous decision to have them the whole length of the promenade in Douglas, apparently. The Legislative Council voted down the decision, but the majority of the House of Keys members voted in favour. So, with a combined vote due to take place next month, it looks like the horse trams will be curtailed. But the Infrastructure Minister says the horse trams are just one factor in the promenade debate and can't be dealt with in isolation. Are you content with the curtailing of the horse trams as long as the promenade refurbishment itself goes ahead? One track with passing places, full length of the prom, please. Just get on with it. We're all sick to death with the fiasco, says Alan. I agree with you, Alan. I can't understand why this goes on and on. And the thing that bothers me about this is that it seems as though half the work that the last Tynwald did has been completely wasted. I mean, this was debated and gone into and argued about last year. And Tynwald decided last July what it wanted to happen, and that's completely been overturned, and they're debating it yet more. I do worry sometimes that the government of the Isle of Man is all about just discussing things, and it's just a big talking shop, reason for people to make a noise rather than actually do anything. Because I suppose if you do actually make a decision, then you're held to account for that. If you never make a decision, if you just keep talking about things, then that's all right. Not really a way forward for us, though, I wouldn't have thought. Howard's back, so let's go to the lines. Hello, Howard.
You're talking about the horse trams. I know it's going to rear its ugly head again, but I think the more I hear of this, the more there's a hidden agenda.
Oh.
Yes, one of our conspiracies.
Oh, good.
From Broadway to Summerland, there was never centre parking. From the Rendezvous to the Villiers, there was always centre parking.
Right.
In the winter, the horse trams are taken over. So, I said this before, that there was objections by hoteliers on the Loch Promenade end to the horse trams running the whole way.
Yes.
Now, this makes it even worse in the sense that they're stopping at the Rendezvous. Well, I can see eventually there'll be centre parking there.
Just for somebody who's only been here for 20 years, where's the Rendezvous?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that roundabout just before you come to the Sefton.
Oh, right, yeah.
Sorry, it used to be a big cafe there.
Right.
The Rendezvous Cafe.
All
Okay,
right.
I'm only young. But, just at that point where that roundabout, that Garden Island is
Yes.
in front of the Sefton, from that point, we always referred to as locally as the Rendezvous, going back to as was the pier.
Yeah.
And we always had centre parking in the winter there.
Okay.
Now, if there's no trams running there summer and winter, that there then leaves itself open to centre parking.
Okay.
Now, as well as the parking on either side, so you're going to triple the parking.
But they've not done that, certainly for 20 years that I can remember. There's not been centre parking, and there are no horse trams during the winter, are there?
No, there used to always be centre parking in there on the tram lines, and they've done away with the ordinary parking. Used to be parallel parking on both sides of the prom.
Yes.
And I think they've done away with the centre parking when they made it reverse in on the angle.
Okay, yeah.
But that there would be a great benefit to the hotels and to the people of the town. This is maybe what they're thinking of, the shops, etc.
Okay.
Because all the shops that end of town. Now, maybe this is in the books at the back that the public never see. Because I remember when they first mooted this, some of the hotels down there objected strongly to the trams running the full length of the promenade.
Right.
But that is not a public parking area, it's a public highway.
Yes.
And to change the status of that, you would have to then either give free parking to the hotels or charge for parking in the centre, which would then take that away from being a public highway to turn it into a public car park.
Yes.
So you would not only have to change the fact that the trams are on, you'd have to change the legislation, because that then would be not become part of the public highway.
Right.
It would have to be marked as a proper car park.
So you think that there's a hidden agenda then, clearly,
I think
Howard?
there is.
All right, well, hopefully one of our MHKs will be listening to this and will ask a question when it's debated in Tynwald next month and say, is there some sort of hidden agenda here, and is it the hotels on Loch Promenade that don't want a horse tram?
To vote for Christmas, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but, if somebody might be listening to this who's not aware of this as a theory, who would be able to ask that question?
I'm only a layperson.
Yeah.
That's what they're paid a vast fortune to think on these things and follow them through.
Okay.
But that is, in my mind, what is in the back of their minds is to give a couple of hundred car park spaces on where the tram lines used to be. Mm. And that way then allegedly help the shops. This is what their theory is going to be, help the hotels. But it's just going to fill up with people parking because the number of spaces you put there, the number of cars you're going to be behind to fill them.
Yeah, I mean, I see the point that you're making on this, but the thing I don't understand is that if that is a valuable piece of parking space, why haven't they used it for the last 20 winters that I can think of?
Well, they changed the system from the parallel parking, and they then moved to the back end parking.
Right. Okay.
And
do you think
that was in
that's
theory to get more cars on there?
right?
But I agree with you. Why weren't they using that for centre parking? One of their mainstays was it was dangerous because people were backing out into the traffic.
And getting out of the cars in the middle of the road as well.
Probably were, yeah.
So maybe it's just something that's not allowed these days, or not considered good
there's
practice.
nothing stopping it. There's nothing stopping it because you do that down in the likes of Castletown and places. They back out there. But in somewhere in the system, there is an ulterior motive. There's a hidden agenda, and they're not saying a word.
Well, yeah, I wonder if it's that, or I wonder if it's the fact that our politicians historically just like discussing things and debating them and coming with alternatives, and rather than actually pressing the button. And see, if I was benevolent dictator for life, I'd do what Alan suggested, our first text today, which is that I'd run a single tram line along the pavement on the seaside of the promenade, all the way from Derby Castle up to the sea terminal. And I'd then put a thin little piece of pavement on the roadside of that as a divider, and then I'd have cars parked herringbone style as they are at the moment.
Exactly.
And that would release space in the middle of the road where the tram tracks are now, so it'd be, it's a net gain, if anything.
Yeah. If you've got a 50-foot road, by moving the tram lines, which are two tram lines, occupying a space of 12 to 14 feet, put a single tram line on the pavement side, you actually are gaining ground.
You probably are.
Because you're moving them over, it's not going to get smaller.
You probably are. You could probably do herringbone parking both sides of the promenade then as well.
Then, quite easily.
I think that is, a perfect solution. And why they won't do it, I really don't know.
Well, they've got their own agenda and their own little harebrained schemes, and they want to all go out with. Well, one fellow went out recently. And his harebrained schemes took him out. So what he's got to be very careful of. They're in for 5 years. But they're not in for a popular vote. They're in to do what we want them to do.
True. All right. Thanks, Howard. Thanks for your call. Some interesting conspiracy theories to start the programme today. Another comment from somebody. I was surprised when the proposed scheme was different again to all the others that had been proposed. Well, it's because it gives them something else to talk about rather than do anything. I know not everyone will be happy, but I don't think the majority of people wanted the tracks to remain where they are, where they cause delays on one of the busiest roads. I genuinely don't mind the shortening of the line. People don't use it to get from the ferry to hotels anymore, and the villa makes for a nicer terminus for the MER and horse trams than the sea terminal. Right, okay. That's an unusual point of view that not many people seem to agree with, but thank you for it. Stu, we have the only original horse-drawn tram system remaining in the world. I agree, one track, full length of the prom. Oh, good, somebody else. That's it. You see, it's gathering momentum, this now. Stu, you know my views on the horse trams. Run them the full length of the Irish seabed, says Mel. Thank you, Mel. I don't know about Joe Public, but I'm bored with the horse trams. Just mend the road, says Rusty's dad. Stu, I think too many people are thinking too much about this and letting their imagination get the better of them, says Dave. Talk about flogging a dead horse. I'm bored now, just switched off, says Bill. I'm sorry, Bill. I mean, it is one of those sort of rolling stories, so I don't apologise for covering it again. The answer is a monorail system, then eat the horses. Yes, and a felt museum. David says, I have no problems with horse trams terminating in the vicinity of the War Memorial and no problem with the remaining in the centre of the road. The proposed terminus is close to one end of the shopping street and may encourage more shoppers onto Castle Street. That's true. Why must the trams go to the sea terminal? The days when there were loads of boats coming in and people arriving would head for the trams to take them to the hotels have long since gone and won't be coming back. No, you're quite right. In addition, there are no longer any hotels between Victoria Street and Regent Street. It's only a 5-minute walk along to the War Memorial. When it was proposed that the tram should run on the walkway, everybody objected because the walkway was for walking on. Well, here's a chance for people to walk on it. Careful what you wish for, I suppose. Some very good points there from David. Thank you, David. They overturned the TV licence thing, so are certainly entitled to overturn this waste of money on trams. If everyone who signed the tram petition had bought a season ticket, there would have been no loss of revenue, so let them pay up or shut up. Okay. If it were me doing the job, I'd rip the road up to 10 inches deep, put 6 inches of base tarmac down, then 4 inches of surface tarmac down and leave the tram lines alone, says Joe. Probably be a lot cheaper as well, Joe. Whether or not you could, I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know whether or not that would work or not. This from Mark, who often makes sense. The important issue that's been missed in relation to the horse trams is not their position, length, number of horses, etc. It's one of the democratically expressed instructions from Tynwald last July to the civil service to do as they've been told. Yeah, they were. It's not for any civil servant, no matter how senior or egotistical, to ignore the will of our elected politicians and decide with no mandate to do what they want. The civil servants do this all the time. They have a misplaced, arrogant view that they can govern by dictating to us what will be done to us. Well, we've seen that as far as the Isle of Man decided a long time ago it didn't want an all-island speed limit, but one is being brought in by stealth by civil servants. So if the executive holds power over the electorate, it's called a dictatorship. Clearly, this is the system that operates over us in the Isle of Man. Seemingly, democracy is something to be ignored by these power-hungry civil servants. The word servants there in the title for a reason. It's for them to enact the will of the people, no matter what they think themselves. This has long since been forgotten by our corrupted civil services. Regards from Mark. Well, I think to an extent he makes a good point. I don't know what you think about it. I know that you won't like this, Stu, but as you're an adopted Manx man, yes I am. I wonder how many of the population that want to get rid of the horse trams are Manx. Non-Manx will not see this as their heritage. I think that the government should purchase a job lot of skyhooks for the horse trams. That would solve all the problems. Yes, it would. Stu, Mr. Harmer is obviously just another spineless politician. Hang on a second, that's a bit unfair. I'd thought that things had changed. He's allowing civil servants to railroad him into grinding the public down on this matter. He's been put into a privileged position by the electorate, and they have over and over said what they want. Well, see, I don't know. There's so many different points of view on this that I don't know that there is a clear consensus from the public on it. Stand up, man. Tell the designers the track stays where it is. Now go and design a scheme around it and earn the extortionate fees the public are paying you. And that from Ali.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is the sewerage rate the fairest way of charging? Chairman of Manx Utilities has admitted he's relieved that Tynwald approved the sewerage rate for the coming year. Yesterday, the court approved the rate of 98 pence in the pound from the 1st of April. It's a 6.5% rise on the current rate. Alex Allinson told James Davies it was an inflationary rise linked to RPI, which was needed to make essential investments in infrastructure and allow improvement work to be carried out. He's linking this to the rates the fairest way of charging the public. I think water meters are the future personally, but what do you think? Because it's always what you think that matters, not what I think. With Manx Utilities putting up sewerage prices, why don't they take the monthly incorporated bonuses off the high-earning senior staff that are on personal contracts to save money? Well, I presume that those people are needed, and that's the deal that they've got. You would imagine that the new chairman would very quickly remove those bonuses and things if he thought he could. Because that would be a good way, an easy way of saving money, but I suspect it's not that simple. Toilet tax is going up over 6%. How is that in line with inflation, says Claire. Stu, who brought the motion to Tynwald about the sewage tax, says Howard. That'll be currently the new chairman, Dr. Allinson. About the sewage rate, I think MLC's voted on this issue. They have no mandate from the electorate, so why can they have a vote on this and other issues that can affect all of us? We have no power to get rid of them, whereas an MHK is answerable. Well, yes, but only every 5 years. My view is that only elected MHK should have the ability to vote. That from Richard. Okay. Properties should be charged on the number of bathrooms and whether or not they have a bath or a shower. A house with 5 bedrooms, all with ensuite, shouldn't be charged the same as a flat with just a shower. Well, now, I disagree, you see. I don't think it's the number of showers or baths or toilets that you've got. I think it's the amount of water that you use. And the fairest thing is to have a meter on your incoming water. Because the amount that goes out is predicated upon the amount that comes in, so it's easiest to measure the water coming in. So you can have 10 bathrooms if you feel that way inclined, but if you've only got one person living there, you're only going to use that amount of water. So I think that a water meter is the fairest thing. I did not know inflation was 6.5%, says Mike. It depends on which of the figures that you look at. Stu, these price increases by the MUA should not be allowed to proceed. I appreciate the sewerage system needs upgrading, but it wasn't the Manx public that failed to carry out the necessary work over the years, nor was it the Manx public that racked up £500 million worth of debts. Yet over the next 20 years we have to pay it back. In that case, there should be no price increases or wage bonus increases for the same period of time, says Mal. Right, okay, fair dues. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on who's got a point of view on this. Hello, John.
Picking up on your comment about metering the water.
Yeah.
That's by far and away the best way to go.
I think so. I think it's fair.
Yeah, if you look at the UK now, larger areas are having their water metered.
Yes.
Because in some cases one company supplies the water and another company takes the wastewater away.
Right.
And I think it's based on a percentage figure of 95%. So if you get 1,000 gallons of water, you get charged for disposing of 950 gallons.
Well, that sounds fair.
Water.
Yeah, that sounds fair, doesn't it?
Yeah, and not just for the private sector, but also in the private sector, commercial premises, properties, small shops which may have one or two people in them for 8 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, are paying full whack on their water rates.
Yes.
And again for the sewage.
Yeah.
There are other companies who use large amounts of water, and here in Peel there's probably going to be the shellfish processing down on the quay at the food park. They use large amounts of water. They also produce large amounts of waste, and they get an unfair charge, if you like.
Well, I think that most of us agree with the user pays principle. You know, if you use a service, then it's not unreasonable to expect to have to pay for that. It's just that when you're paying for something that you're not getting, or somebody else is getting something and they're using a lot more of it than you, then that becomes unfair, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, we pay for our telephone, electricity, gas, the standard charges which everybody has to pay, and it's based on what you use. It's metered.
Yeah.
And nobody complains.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use it, you switch it off.
Well, that's true, although I've got a text here from Tom. He says, do you think that families with half a dozen kids would be happy with water meters?
Well, that's where the family allowance comes in. I think it's still called that.
Yeah.
People on limited incomes should be covered, or the shortfall could be covered that way.
Put them all in the bath together. That's what my parents used to do.
Stick them out in the rain when it's wet. Yeah.
All right, John, thank you very much for your call. Another John's been on. John, what about septic tank users, half water metered? Let's go to the lines. We've got Brian on. Hello, Brian.
Your metering idea.
Yes.
Yeah. They're £500 million in debt.
Yes.
You fit the meters.
Yes.
Now your water has to be dearer than petrol, so it's cheaper to bath your kids in a bath full of petrol, or buy bottled water, because to pay £500 million back, you're going to have to find, off the top of my head, about £6,000 for every man, woman and child on the island.
Yeah, well, that's all if you want to pay it off this week. You know, I mean, obviously, you'd have to set a rate for the metered water, but so what you'd do is that you decide how much was being taken in using the current system and how much you wanted to take in after it was metered and apportion it that way.
But that's my point. Do the math on it. The math is that at the moment, the fact is, they're not paying any interest on the loan. Treasury's footing the bill there. 2037 or something, they start having to address the issue. But the problem is to claw back that amount of money from what they derive in water charges. If they levied it straight onto the water, it would be cheaper to buy bottled water. That's your first issue. Your second issue is, what happens to your recycling? People pick up their yogurt carton and it says, rinse and put out. I'm not rinsing it with this gold that comes out of the tap. Get lost.
Well, yes, I suppose that is a thought as far as how... Well, it might make people a bit more careful about how they use the water. All right, Brian. As ever, some interesting points there. Stu, you're on a slippery slope there. I'm always on a slippery... I live on a slippery slope. User pays, I understand the principle, says Mike, but if you broaden that out, when it comes to health service, it would mean that those who are most ill in society would pay the most. You have to look at these things in the broader context. That's fair. No, I'll take that one on the chin. You're right. I mean, there would be exceptions, and certainly as far as the user pays, you wouldn't do that with people who needed healthcare. As an ex-employee, I can tell you that commercial premises are on water meter and they pay whichever is the greatest, i.e. if rates are higher than the meter, you pay the rates. If the meter reading's highest, you pay by meter, which is unfair if you don't use a lot. I don't think I know for a fact all commercial premises aren't on a meter. People with 6 kids should not be given allowances for their water meter charges. It was their choice to have 6 kids, so they should pay for them. Okay. Meanwhile, back as a centrist point of view, fitting water meters would not be a solution, as I have 3 acres of land on separate meters, 3 areas of land on separate meters, but as I don't use the minimum quantity, I have to pay a fixed minimum charge. Also, our meter usage at the farmhouse and buildings doesn't reach the minimum, so we charged on rateable value, so all 4 metered amounts don't count. Okay, all right. Why are they using RPI when they use CPI for pension increases? They should use the same for both, says Derek. Yes, that's a suggestion I've heard a couple of times this week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
The main plank of the government's economic plan could be wobbling if the island's population is shown to be in decline. According to the Chamber of Commerce, that will be the case. The census results are not scheduled to be published until March next year. Governments previously advocated an increase in numbers to stimulate economic and infrastructure growth, with the ideal figure as high as 15,000 extra people over the next 2 decades. But the president of the Isle of Man Chamber of Commerce says that she'll be very surprised if the island's numbers haven't in fact already shrunk. After the emergence of the third government report into the implications of Brexit, it's still uncertain what the ultimate outcome will be at the end of the road. But Mickey Swindell says that the island must act now to put itself in as strong a position as possible, and that must mean relaxing work permit rules. Should the work permit system be suspended for a time, or could that spell disaster? Let's go to the lines. Hello, Peter.
I've been listening with interest, obviously. Now, the 15,000, now I've asked this question before, but none of our civil servants or none of the politicians either have the brains, the knowledge or the bottle to come out and tell me. Is that 15,000? I presume he or she will have a partner. I presume that they will have the average children, which at the moment I think will be 2.5. Now, if that is the case, then we're talking about a population increase of over 60,000. Now, is there the infrastructure in place, i.e. hospitals, your doctors, your dentists, housing, schools? Is that infrastructure in place, or are the huge plans that we know nothing about to put these right so that there is the facilities to take all these immigration?
All right. Well, I don't know the answer to your question, basically. I don't know if the extra 15,000 that was mooted was just the primary person, or whether or not it included their families as well. So I'm not sure about that. But, I mean, the way to look at this, surely, is that if they come, we will build it because we'll have people paying taxes to improve the infrastructure. That's the whole point of increased immigration, isn't it?
Have you known anything to be built very, very quickly on the Isle of Man? Yeah. Have you known this to be put right on the Isle of Man very quickly to accommodate them? What's going to happen to all the people that are waiting for appointments? What's going to happen before then? Before the new places, new things, etc. are built? You know the Isle of Man as well as I do.
Yeah, I mean, there is capacity in an awful lot of areas of our infrastructure, though, and I take your point about waiting lists at the hospital and stuff like that. But, I mean, we do need more people paying taxes to be able to afford to even keep the level of services that we've got now, don't we?
Which comes first, in the chicken or the egg?
Well, yeah. Above my pay grade to decide that, I'm afraid. But.
Yeah, and mine as well. And there's no one. I have asked this question. I asked this question 3-4 years ago, right. But not one person, including the Chamber, this lady from the Chamber of Commerce, nothing.
All right. Okay. Well, you raise a very interesting point there, Peter. Whether or not the 15,000 is a gross increase in numbers, or whether or not it's that's just the primary person involved, and it would include more people because of families as well. Let's go to line 3. We've got Malcolm on. Hello, Malcolm.
Yeah, regarding the work permits,
not work permits as such that I think should stay in place, not just as work permits, but for control. A lot of the questions on work permits are sort of, have you got a criminal record, and so on and so forth. So basically what I think is they should stay in place to almost like an immigration control to stop the undesirable people coming to the island.
Well, I've often thought over the years that that's exactly what the work permit system is. Now, I expect the politicians would say, oh, no, it's nothing, no, that's nothing to do with it at all. Yeah. But I wonder whether or not the work permit system is a form of immigration control. Yeah, well,
if it is, I think it's a good thing, and I think it should stay in place. Whether the lady from the Chamber of Commerce actually realises that, or whether a lot of people, I've got a lot of friends. I'm not Manx born and bred, but I've been here for nearly 37 years. But I have a lot of friends who are Manx people, and they can't actually see that. That's not their first thing. They just think work permits are work permits for work. But when I've sort of said to them about it being keeping a lot of undesirable people out, they all of a sudden the penny drops.
Yes.
So whether the lady from the Chamber of Commerce thinks that or doesn't think that, or whether some of our politicians don't actually realise that, I don't know. But I think they should stay in place pretty well as they are.
All right.
That's it, really.
Yeah,
okay.
Good point. Thank you for your call, Malcolm. It's always nice to hear voices on the programme. This from Daniel. He says, if the government spent less time talking about horse trams and free TV licences and instead invested in the local economy, then they wouldn't have to worry about a potential fall in population or even have to think about softening work permit legislation. Okie dokie. Permits are not policed. Friend who's a skilled painter applied for a job painting the villa. He was offered a job £2 an hour less than he was being paid 3 years ago. The rate of pay offered was $2.30 less than the Isle of Man Employers Federation minimum rate for tradesmen. Reason given was that the Polish will and are working on site for this rate. Well, that staggers me. I mean, if that's true, and I've no reason to doubt you, that staggers me if that is being allowed to happen on a government site as well. Let's go to the lines. We've got our friend Neil on from Castletown. Hello, Neil.
I think it's important, before the debate unfurls anymore, to clarify that I personally think that the work permit system has been abused for many, many years.
Yes.
It certainly has been abused. I have some younger friends from university who are fully qualified and are driving vans because they're not offered, better paid jobs within the financial service sector.
Okay.
Which is disgraceful, to be honest. I mean, the Isle of Man government, although when I left school it was a full grant, but now, of course, they get a partial grant towards their university education. Mm. So we're investing in their future and then not giving them the opportunities if or when they want to return to the Isle of Man.
But, and I mean, I'm just taking this position to try and draw you out on this. Is it maybe that they don't interview terribly well? Because as an employer, surely it's in an employer's interest to employ Manx people wherever they can. If it's a Manx company, you'd want to employ Manx people. So why would people want to bring people over from the UK unless they were bringing more of a skill set with them?
They want to bring people over from the UK because they're usually their friends or friends of their associates, so they want to furnish them with a job.
Do you think?
Simply. Absolutely. I'm 100% certain on that.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, 3 of the people I know who have university degrees are in their mid-20s. They haven't even reached the interview process.
Yeah.
They're told they don't have the experience. Well, when I started my job, I had the qualifications, but I didn't have the experience. Now, obviously, I have both, and later in life you have both.
Yes.
But how can a younger person gain experience without being given a job and given those chances and those opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would say about the work permit system is that it does mean sometimes that you've got to employ somebody who might not be the best person for the job. When you interview people, you might have to employ somebody who's local because you know that you're not going to get a work permit, somebody who might seem on the face of it at interview to be much better suited to the job.
Well, I don't like the concept of relaxing the work permit system at all. I think there are many very good qualified people on this island, and in fact it's another debate which you could open up.
Sure.
And the Alzheimer's Society have recently said that people of 60 and 65 should be encouraged to work until they're 70.
Yeah.
So why not take somebody on who's in their perhaps their early 60s who would like a slight change of career and employ them for a further 10 or 15 years. They've certainly got the experience.
Sure.
And in many instances, the qualifications.
Yeah, all right, fair dues.
It's certainly been abused. I know on several personal fronts, not myself personally, but friends that I work with, their children and nephews, etc., have been simply unable to even get an interview. And I just think that's disgraceful, to be honest. I mean, I take on board, actually, your first commentator's comments that 15,000 workers obviously means 60,000 people coming to the Isle of Man when you include their families. And of course, it's another 10 or 15,000 cars. You know, I mean, we've had a debate earlier today about the congestion on the roads. I mean, there's going to be even more congestion.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether the 15,000 was a gross figure or not.
I think Mrs. Swindell said they wanted 15,000 working people. So obviously, those working people, unless they're single, they're going to bring their families with them. So that's obviously going to be a huge increase on population and a massive drain on our infrastructure and the resources which we have already.
All right, Neil, good to talk to you as ever. Thank you for calling today. And we've got another of our favourite callers. Sylvia's on. Hello, Sylvia.
I just wanted to call over the work permit.
Yeah.
I know, like the person before said, I know of many people who can't get a start in the island.
Yes.
And but they watch their job they applied for being filled by a UK citizen or an EU. But even citizens of the UK did not retain their traditional right of access to jobs in the Isle of Man. And the European Communities Act, that is, of 1973.
Yes.
And on accession of the UK to the EC, treaties.
Oh, this is the thing where Manx people couldn't work in Europe, wasn't it?
Yes, but they're also not being able to move, get a start in their own land.
Yes.
And before long, what will have to happen, they'll say, well, there's so few of them, because we've been squashed out of goodness knows what, but they don't have the trouble of leaving the Isle of Man.
Right.
And going to the UK with a passport stamp. They've got no right to work or services.
Yes.
Manx people do. And therefore, those people that want to do that, they should be people can't just step off a boat. This is what's happened in England.
Right.
They just step off a boat and decide they're going to stay there. We'll have the same thing here.
Okay.
And I think it's wrong. Leave the work permit alone and stop inviting your mates over to take up a position you've got on offer. If you don't like living here and what we do, go away.
There's a boat in the morning. Thank you very much, Sylvia. Thanks for getting in touch.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
I'd also like your points of view about this Nurofen story. I'm outraged by it. I really am. You know, they're preying on people who are ill and in pain. You know, if you've got period pain or if you've got a migraine headache or whatever, you're probably quite prepared to pay twice the going price of Nurofen if you think that you're buying something that's specially formulated for that pain. To find out that it's just the basic stuff but at twice the price, I think it's outrageous. I think that people should have gone to jail for fraud for that. Now, mine are fine, but what do you think about it? Do you think it's in any way acceptable, or do you agree with me? Mike called about this drugs thing. It's indefensible if this is the marketing strategy of a major company. Well, it seems to be. If it is, it's questionable if they should have a licence to trade. Now, I agree, Mike. I think you're quite right. If it was put out to an agent, then I guess they can charge what they want, but if the parent company is behind it, it's wrong. Well, I'm pretty sure that they are. I mean, let's face it, you know, you've got 5 different boxes of tablets available at the supermarket. One of them is just Nurofen. Another one is Nurofen specially targeted for period pain, and that's twice the price. And actually, it's exactly the same tablet. I mean, that's just completely indefensible as far as I'm concerned. And like I say, they've been fined £3.5 million in Australia for it. I'd put the chief executive officer in jail for fraud. Really, I would, because you're preying on people who are poorly or have got pain, who don't mind paying an extra couple of quid if they think it's something that targets the pain. And I've got this from Jo, and she says, watched a great programme on this on the BBC. Researchers went to Boots, etc., and compared drugs between them. They all do the same thing, as it's impossible for a painkiller to recognise a specific problem and go to that area, i.e. migraine tablets can't just affect the head, they affect the whole body. Deep heat is another one. It's got absolutely no effect on deep tissues, just top skin. Thank you, Joe. I didn't see that, but yeah, they're snake oil salesmen, these people, aren't they? Work in a pharmacy, customers tend to prefer brand names over the generics. We make less money selling Nurofen than ibuprofen, so it's not from lack of trying either. That doesn't make sense. So if people prefer brand names over generics, surely you'd sell more Nurofen than ibuprofen. And the thing is that, you can buy ibuprofen in the supermarkets for about 50 pence for a packet of 16 tablets, can't you? And quite how much Nurofen is, I don't know, but I bet you don't get much change out of £2 or £3. I'm no expert in the placebo effects, as David H., but perhaps people benefit more when they pay more. Well, yeah, maybe, but it's a very cynical abuse of them, isn't it, by the manufacturers? It's concerning that some of these very high-rating compounds are allowed to be sold at supermarkets rather than at pharmacies, says Neil. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, they're very careful about what you sell. If you go to the supermarket and you try and get 2 boxes of paracetamol tablets, you've got to put one back because they can't sell you that many. After comparing the ingredients, I bought generic and own-brand medical products for years. I advise others to do so too. Branded products are an expensive buy just for the name on the box or bottle. I agree with that. Yeah, I buy generics as well. Can't see why you would pay for a branded version of something that you can buy the generic off cheaper. Catherine was just telling me that, there are certain things that work quicker, or it's a caplet or a Liquitab type thing, which might work quicker, but go for the unbranded stuff every time. I would anyway. Generics are the future. Let's go to the lines. We've got our friend Tommy on. Hello, Tom.
You were wrong in saying, well, it's the standard Nurofen being twice the price, Stu. It's up 5 times the price of
right.
16 tablet box of generic paracetamol, Stu.
Yes.
And it can't be any more than 500 milligrams of paracetamol in each tablet.
Right.
So that's I mean, some of these big pharmaceutical giants, they've got more power than some governments. Stuart.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, big pharma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to hear from you. Another Tommy caller said, I suffer from aches and pains. I can get paracetamol from the doctor anytime, but my wife buys it from the pharmacy. It's cheaper to buy it that way than to pay for a prescription. Yep, that's true as well.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can get your thoughts to us via Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag MRTalkingHeads. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.